This is one which is acting as a or the place where you are saving your record. So it's a container of records. Right? So various categories or various type of records you can save, and they actually define how to route the traffic to a domain and its subdomains, which is also telling you how to route traffic to domains and subdomains. Correct? So you have two types of zones which are available. One is public hosted zone, and the other one is a private hosted zone. Right? Public hosted zone and private hosted zone. So the main purpose of deploying these hosted zones, there is one basic principle. As soon as you see the word public and you see the word private. So when you see the word public, it clearly says that it is containing the records where you are trying to route the traffic on the internet, right? Contains records that specify how to route traffic on the internet. Correct? So that is your public hosted zones, or when you're routing the traffic, so it is taking your URLs to the public domains or public domain names which are there, right? Public domain names. Which is there, right? Now it can be something like aws.amazon.com, innomantra.com, facebook.com. It can be anything, right? So there will be definitely some subdomains you may be using, right? That is there. And in private hosted zones, what you're doing?
It's
This is,
within VPC.
sorry,
It's within VPC, Amazon VPC.
which is within VPC.
Private hosted zone, sir. You use it within the VPC. You're using some services within the VPC.
And if I am not using within VPC, then can my DNS zone not be linked to or cannot be used for with the help of direct connect, and you cannot resolve the on-prem records?
That can be done, sir, but it's within the private. You cannot. It's not going to connect to the internet.
So the hosted zone will never be created as a part of the VPC. There is one thing which is known as attachment, and that attachment or association you do at the hosted zone level. So it is not within the VPC, but to a hosted zone, hundreds of VPCs can be connected. Hundreds of VPCs to one hosted zone. So it cannot be within one VPCs, whereas hundreds of VPCs can connect to one hosted zone. It's the other way around, Dhanush.
Okay, sir.
Right? Your point is valid that it can be used with the help of or when it is associated with VPCs. But it cannot be possible that you are using or creating hosted zone within the VPC and it can be used for that VPC only. There are hundreds and thousands of VPCs can be using one hosted zone. Correct?
Okay, sir.
Because ultimately, it is helping you in what? Whether it is public hosted zone, they are helping you in routing the traffic. Correct? So routing the traffic on the basis of resolution process to what it is resolving. So let's say there are 10 or 100 VPCs mapped to this hosted zone. All the 100 VPCs will come to this hosted zone for doing the DNS resolution. Make sense?
Yep,
Is,
sir.
is that clear? Okay, so let's
Yes.
talk about this.
Sir, should the VPCs be connected with the transit gateway or something?
See, let's say, okay, so that is a completely architectural level question, right? Although it looks small, but it is very big. First of all, you should have a landing zone architecture. In landing zone, you should have a core services account in which one of the account is acting as a DNS account. These are all shared accounts. Now, whenever you are interacting with the DNS account, there you need a transit gateway. So there will be a attachment which will be, or there will be a RAM association, which is there for associating two resources sitting in DNS account to the workload account. That is a completely different discussion. That is an architectural level thing which we are doing. But the answer to your question is yes, you can use that if you have different accounts. Is it clear?
Okay, sir.
Right? You can use that. And at the landing zone level, you use transit gateway to connect multiple accounts. And there is one thing which is known as RAM association, which you use. Read about RAM association, transit gateway, and there is one resource which is known as TGW sharing. Right? So that is part of network specialty, right? So organizations do that. Okay.
Okay, sir. We'll read on that.
Yeah. Okay. So coming back to this. So now let's say you have your public hosted zone. Let's talk about the private hosted zone. So this will also do what? Same thing this one is also doing, which means it is containing records. Correct? It is containing records. And that is also doing the same thing that specify how to route traffic. Right? Within or with one VPC or hundreds of VPCs. Correct? And we are doing this for internal or private domains. Correct? So your company's internal services or everything is there, which you use, right? Now, whether you create a public hosted zone or private hosted zone, you have to pay $0.5 per month, right? There are number of resolutions, transaction which is happening, that is separate. But if you have hosted zone, just for the creation of this domain, you have to pay this amount, $0.50. So if you don't need it, delete it, right? Why to pay 40 rupees or 50 rupees per month?
40 rupees, yes.
Yeah, correct. So that is something you have to take care that whether you need it, then only deploy it. Otherwise, you don't do it. Correct. Now, main part or doing the lab or doing the practical of Route 53 is very easy. You create a hosted zone, add a record, it is done. The main part is understanding the architecture, how these hosted zones are being used. Right, everyone? And that is where the interviewer can grill you more. Right? So if you have a VPC, which is there, let's say you have a client or a user. Let's say this is a client or a machine which is there, a client. Right? And let's say you have a public hosted zone, right? So you have your, let's say, any website you're going. Let's say I want to go to amazon.com, correct? Now amazon.com will be reflecting or responding back. This host zone will give an IP, let's say 54.22.33.44, any random IP which is there, you can use, right? That is, you are getting as a public IP address from the hosted zone. Now client has received the IP address. That is what it is there, right? Now this public hosted zone, either it can help you to send the traffic directly to S3 bucket, right? Because that IP may be associated to some S3 bucket. Either this IP can be of an Amazon CloudFront. It can be a public IP onto the EC2 instance. It can be URL of a load balancer. Anything it can be. Yes or no? When you are adding the records in this, and from I want to see from AWS perspective, right? I don't have to worry about what you're writing. Either it will be IP or name. Yes or no?
Yes, yes.
Correct? So S3 bucket when you're using and you have hosted a website, what do you get? What do you get in S3 bucket? Come on, everyone. This is pretty much simple, right? What do you get? You host a static website. What do you get?
We get a S3 URL.
S3 URL. So that will be a CNAME record, right? If anyone wants to have a name to name resolution, name to name, that record type is CNAME, correct? And when you have a name to IP record, that is an A record, correct? Now let's say you have a Amazon CloudFront. In CloudFront, what can be the domain name? In a CloudFront, what can be the domain name? Everyone just uh, respond to the chat. I'm just getting a call. Just give me a moment. Okay, so everyone please respond. I think you're responding in the chat, right? Yes, we'll go on a break. Neeraj, just give me 1 minute. Let's talk about this and then we'll go on a break. Okay. So when you have Amazon CloudFront, I think everyone has gone read CloudFront, right? You all mentioned that day that CloudFront is done. So what you will be getting? Do you recall what is origin over there? Origin, you can map, let's say S3 as well. In the origin, you can map instance as well. If it is an instance, there can be an IP or CNAME. If it is S3, then it can be a URL. So both A and CNAME records can be added. If you have, this is a CloudFront origin. Correct? Okay, let's take a break, everyone. I think everyone is tired. Let's take a break and then let's do it. Right? I'm just applying the time. Okay, I think some issue with the internet. So it is 9:16, everyone. Just be back by 9:26. Okay. Is it fine with everyone? Just be back by 9:26. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay, everyone. So please confirm if you're back.
Yes, sir, I'm back.
Okay. Now let's check the internet. I just restarted my machine, right?
Sir,
I think now it's working, right? Internet is. I think some issue with the router, right? That was the problem. Okay, so let's search Route 53. And let's go and create a hosted zone. Now you can create a hosted zone, something like innovantra.com, right? It's a public hosted zone. Right? And you can select public hosted zone and you can create hosted zone. So hosted zone creation was very easy. The things which you get is your name servers record, NS records over here. Correct, everyone? Is it fine? Make sense? You have the NS which are over here, and by default in any hosted zone, what are there? They are NS records and SOA records. Correct? NS records will be there and SOA records are there. So this can be your master hosted zone. Now you can have subdomains which can also act as a hosted zone. Like sas.innovantra.com, right? So this is also one hosted zone. And let's say this is also a public hosted zone. Correct? And you can create a hosted zone. Now this is also a hosted zone which is there. This is SaaS. So ultimately, if we want that this hosted zone should work with another hosted zone, our idea is your NS records should be sitting as a part of the other hosted zone. Let's say if you come over here, there are NS records is there. Now create records. And let's say you type over here, SAS, and here you select NS, correct? Put the values over here and create record. So what you have done, you have added sas.innovantra.com, right? So when you did a delegation to this, what will happen? This records which you have created over here. Now, any details which you add as a part of, you add as a part of sas.innovantra.com, the records will be pointed towards where? The records will be pointed towards the master hosted zone, right? So you can map your customers that, okay, there are SaaS customers, there are PaaS customers, there are dev customers. You can provide them separate hosted zone to them so that you can maintain your master hosted zone clean. Only map NA record, NS records or TXT records or CA records for certificate authority. Those things you manage. Otherwise, try to maintain a segregation at various levels. Right? That is how in the organization you maintain the segregations for various product group. Right? Let's say this is SaaS, right? So let's say there is one product group which is ITOM, right? itom.innovantra.com, correct? This is also a public hosted zone, correct? You go and create hosted zone. Now map the NS records of this, right? To this innovantra.com. So all the ITOM product group can maintain their records over here, right? Can maintain the records over here. So you can add a record by adding over here, let's say some server is dev, let's say dev 1, 2, 3, or let's say dev instance, right? A record is 2.3.4.5, correct? Create record. This will be added as a part of this, correct? So records are maintained over here, and you are also maintaining the segregation as well. Because domain name which you have purchased, domain name you have purchased is this only. These are your subdomains, sub-hosted zones in which you're managing the records. That you usually do at the organization level. Make sense? Everyone? Make sense?
Yes,
Sir,
sir.
you currently own this domain or what? How do you create it? Hello?
Sorry?
Sir, do you own this domain? How do you create it?
You can create it also in your own account, but it will not work unless and until the NS record which you are defining over here, which was this record, is sitting in GoDaddy,
Okay, okay, okay.
right? For this domain to work, for everything to work, these records, which was the records of inventor.com, this should sit as a part of GoDaddy. If you have
Okay, sir.
purchased the domain name from here, right, then there is no problem. Correct? Then there is no problem. You can purchase the domain name or get the domain name. Let's say go to request. Correct? Where is it? Registered domains. So check availability of a domain name. Let's say I am searching innovantra.com, right? Let's search. This is not available. But what is available? Innovantra.net, innovantra.org, innovantra.info, innovantras.com. These are available. You are paying 15 USD, 12 USD. You select and you pay for it. Correct? Make sense?
Yes, sir. Okay. I thought it won't work that way
No.
currently.
You can purchase domain name from here as well. There is no
Ye-
problem.
Yes, sir. Understood. Understood.
Okay? That is there. So if you purchase a domain name, manage the registered domain in your own DNS account, right? So that is something which is also possible. Okay, let's come back to this. So the public hosted zone is very easy to understand, right? It is not very complex. Usually complex part is what? Complex part is the private hosted zone. Correct? Although the working of both the hosted zone is same, right? Working of both the hosted zone is same. Why? Because ultimately both of them are doing the DNS resolution, right? So let's say now we do one thing. Let's go and why to waste money? Let's go and delete the other records. Sorry, delete the other hosted zones which are there. Okay, so there are records sitting in this, so it will not let me delete that. So what I'll do, I'll go and delete this hosted zone first. Okay, so this is gone. Let's go to this. Delete zone. Cancel. Delete record. You have to remove the record, then only the zone will be deleted. Correct? Now you go and delete the hosted zone. You will not get any kind of error. Sorry. You have to remove the NS records, right? For the one which you have added. Rest you can remove it like this. So this was the public hosted zone. Now let's say you go to Route 53 and you go and create a hosted zone. And here you mention some internal domain like let's say aws.instsas.local because it's internal, right? I don't want to use it outside. So it's like a private hosted zone which is there. You create that. And after that, you go to the private hosted zone. Now it is asking what? Public when was there? It is not asking any kind of VPCs, right? But when you have private hosted zone, it will ask you for the VPCs. So you go over here and select that, okay, which region, which location. Let's say I want to do it for Oregon, or let's say I want to do it for Virginia. Correct? North Virginia is there. Select for a VPC. This is the VPC which is there, right? Add VPC. Or if you want to add hundreds of VPCs, you can do that. There is no problem, right? So multiple VPCs you can associate to one hosted zone, right? Now you create the hosted zone, correct? Now the hosted zone is created. aws.insert.local. Now create the record. Let's say the record is db SAS, or let's say db app, correct? Any a record, let's say 10.20.30.40, correct? Create record. This is your internal server which is there. You have associated to the VPC. So how this would be working? Since you have associated to the VPC, so you have to understand from that perspective, right? So let's go and talk about that. Let's say this is your private hosted zone, correct? And inside this, what do you have? You have list of records, right? Which are sitting as a part of the zone file. This zone file is the one which is there, which is carrying the list of the records. Right, everyone? Now you see what is here. You have the NS records. Correct? So ultimately, this VPC which you see over here, sorry, this hosted zone which you see over here, is ultimately pointing to what? Let's say this is a records, or this is the hosted zone. This is pointing towards these records. These are the name server records which are there. Correct? Now these are the name server record of this hosted zone where all the list of records are sitting, right? Where all the list of records are sitting. Now let's say you have associated it to a VPC. Let's say this is my VPC. Correct? This is the VPC which is there. Now this VPC you bind it with what? You bind it this with the hosted zone. Correct? This was VPC 1. Similarly, there will be other VPCs as well. This is VPC 2. And let's say this is also binded to this. Now, when they are binded, ultimately they are doing what? From here to here, they are propagating what? They are propagating the NS records. They are propagating the NS records. Now, these NS records are only visible to whom? The DNS server, because that DNS server is the only one who is capable of doing the resolution. So in VPC, if you have seen or if you have learned networking, right? Any instance or anything which is there, what happens? Let's say you have an address block which you have defined over here is this is 10.0.0/24. This is 10.20.30.0/24. Correct? two subnets. Now in this, always the user will get the IP from where? From the first 4 IP addresses are reserved. Whether it is VPC or whether it is subnet, it is reserved at both level, right? Let's say you have subnets. So you do the mapping over here. These are, let's say, multiple subnets which are there. Correct? Multiple subnets are there. Now, subnets which you are defining over here, you know, they are the one which are carrying the EC2 instances, right? They are the one which are carrying the EC2 instances. Correct? And these EC2 instances which you see over here, they will be getting an IP address from this block, right? Let's say, okay, so let's say we give the block of subnet, which is here inside this, right? This is one subnet. And this is another subnet. And let's give the VPC a bigger address block, 10.10.0.0/16. And this is 10.20.16, right? Similarly, another subnet will be defined over here as well. Let's talk about one. Now you have seen whenever you are providing an IP onto the EC2 instance, what happens? There are 5 IPs which are reserved. What are those IPs? What are the 5 IPs which are reserved? Come on, quick. What are the 5 IPs which are reserved? Come on, everyone. What are the 5 IPs? In a VPC in subnet, which 5 IPs are reserved?
Sir, dot zero is for network purpose.
It
Dot
will
zero one
always
zero
be, it will always be dot zero.
as a network ID, sir.
No,
No.
uh,
Sometimes 63, sometimes
sometimes
128,
63 cannot be the
uh,
network address.
64,
Yes, so
128.
which means you have to say the first IP of the network.
First
First,
IP opening.
right? First
Yes, sir.
IP is the network address. Correct? Second IP is the default gateway. Third IP is DNS1. Fourth IP is DNS2, right? And fifth IP is broadcast address. Correct? Yes or no?